On Friday, Russia shot out 76 missiles, targeting Ukrainian civilian power grid. What's that? He's here, the hero! Fear not, my comrades, we are safe! Behold, the machine gun man. He just downed a cruise missile with a machine gun. First time, never been done before. Yep. Wow, Slava Ukraini. I need to read your guys' comments about this. So anyway, I started blasting. I'm sorry, I really am, but I can't believe that without a video. My sir, are you doubting that machine gun man is not machine gun man? Be careful what you say. Machine gun man might be visiting you. Which perk is that? When did the support class get an anti-air traits for all equipment? The meta is broken. Oh, we have gamers in the chat. Yet he still makes second place after the grandma that took a drone out with a jar of pickled tomatoes. Oh, definitely. I mean, if a grandma takes a drone out with a jar of pickled tomatoes, that is the Ukrainian spirit. That grandma deserves the Person of the Year by Time magazine. So this is the front line here that WAGNER PMC is responsible for, and if we zoom in we see Bakhmut, of course, but this settlement right here is Yakovlivka, and in this map you can already see that half of it is taken, but actually we have a photo today, this one from the center of this settlement, that Russians took this settlement. The map will update tomorrow. This settlement is now occupied by the Russians. This is part of the bigger tactic that Russia has adapted to take Bakhmut, since they are not able to take it by storming the settlement. Wagner has been storming Bakhmut for months, they have failed. Now they're trying to flank it from the south and from the north. The goal of this tactic is to force Ukrainian troops to pull out of the settlement because they would face being sacked into the settlement. South from Bakhmut is Avdiivka, this settlement right here, and we can see Russia has been deploying this tactic here for months already. We can see northern and southern flank are pushing slowly forward. And if this continues, Ukrainians really have to pull out of Avdiivka, because very soon it might face being sacked by the Russian forces. And I just gotta point out that between Bakhmut and Avdiivka there's a settlement called New York in Ukraine. And they have many of those. They have Paris, they have London, they have New York. And it is on the front line. If Russians take New York, I'm sure Americans have something to say about this. The time is here, the time to butcher some foreign names with my Estonian pronunciation. I will use this tongue of mine to make these names as unpronounceable as possible. Let's go. The biggest Patreons I have, I'll butcher the names. Max Power, Oscar Ramos. This dude has been sending me Christmas letters for the past 3 years. Thank you, Oscar. Tom Marvel, Dmitri Kostyukhenko, Jameskari Farmer. Thank you to these patrons for supporting the channel. If you like what I do, then you should subscribe to this channel right now. Just press the button and become a patron. Link is in the description below. You might hear your name being said in a way that you never imagined. We just talked about Wagner trying to take Avdiivka and Bakhmut, but who is behind Wagner? This man is called Yevgeny Prigozhin. He's one of the most powerful men in Russia right now, and I made a documentary video about him and his life if you're interested about how Wagner started and who is behind it. Links in the description below. This incredible video shows us Ukrainian MiG-29 shooting 2 American AGM-88 HARM missiles. Immediately after firing the 2 missiles, it breaks away. Russia has issues with air defense in Ukraine and in Russia, and this is why. Ukrainian Air Force has been chipping away at Russian S-300s with these HARM missiles. They're doing God's work. I also want to acknowledge the fact that Ukrainian fighter jets and helicopters are still flying. Russia has completely failed to achieve air superiority in Ukraine. Actually, the fact is that Russian pilots are very much afraid of flying over Ukrainian airspace. What they usually do nowadays is that they fly in Russia, close to Ukrainian border, they shoot the missiles, and then they turn back. They don't want to go into Ukrainian airspace because the percentage of coming out alive is very small nowadays. In the past weeks, there has been an increase in Ukrainian resolve and capability to strike targets deep inside Russia and in Crimea. Russians in Crimea don't feel like Putin can defend them anymore. They're seeing and hearing explosions in the middle of the night. They're seeing smoke. They're seeing fires, they're seeing and feeling the war. They're getting the feeling that Ukrainians are coming to liberate their land. And thus, this is the Crimean Bridge right now. The Russian exodus of Crimea is underway, making way for Ukrainians. I mean, it is their land. In the north of Romania, near the Hungarian border and 85 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, at the station of Valea lui Mihail, a trainload of 22 units of American infantry fighting vehicle Bradley was spotted. But let's acknowledge that according to the United States Department of State, there are about 3,000 United States troops right now stationed in Romania, and this includes infantry fighting vehicles Bradley and the Abrams tanks. This is not a winter wonderland, despite the fact that Christmas is coming. This is Novosilivsk, after Ruski Mir has had its way at it. This is the freedom and liberation that Putin has to offer. This is the Russian miracle. This is why the Ukrainians stand like one man behind the cause. In most frontal areas, the ground has not frozen fully yet. But in this video, we get a glimpse of how much more difficult it is to dig a trench through a frozen ground. It requires multiple times more effort, since you have to pick away at the ground, and only then you can start shoveling. But the positive thing about the frost is frozen ground carries heavy armor. Both sides, Russia and Ukraine, are right now waiting for the ground to freeze fully so they can start their winter offensives. It is near impossible in Ukraine right now to do any offensive operations, and you cannot use heavy armor right now except for on the roads. You cannot really order any huge offensives at the moment. Both sides are eagerly waiting for the temperatures to fall. This is a passenger plane flying over Moldova. And this is a view out of the window. You're casually going on a vacation over Moldova and you see the reality on the ground in Ukraine. Explosions that resemble mushroom clouds, casually flying over the airspace next to war zone. It's eerie. This truck is called ZIL 131. This specific truck is made in 1972, so it is an old truck. What really makes this one unique is that it only has 2,000 kilometers on the clock, or 1,000 miles. This truck is 50 years old. This is a collector's article right here. If you're a vehicles collector, you want to get your hands on this truck. But it also shows the Russian resolve to conserve open these antiques. We all know the Russian logistical situation with the railroads. Everything that goes beyond railroads, they need to use trucks. Russians were having issues with the shortage of trucks in the summer. I mean, right now, if you get a truck, you're lucky in the Russian army. We now jump to the other side of the world. We jump to Japan. The country came out with an insane statement. Japan approves the biggest military buildup of its armed forces since the Second World War. Officials from Japan stated that the North Korean, Russian and Chinese threat cannot be ignored anymore. And all the North Korean economy cannot be talked about, and Russian economy is only 1/3 of the Japanese economy. China is the biggest threat, and Japan needs to have their own military capability of defending themselves, as well as the capability to counterattack if necessary. This decision abandons more than 7 decades of Japanese pacifism after the Second World War. It reminds me of Germany's decision a few months ago to pump 100 billion euros into its armed forces. Now it's Japan's turn. Japan aims to double its military spending to 2% GDP in the span of the next 5 years. I have read the comments, and I know that many Americans in the chat right now are happy with this decision, because this means Japan will less likely depend on the US forces. After this increase, Japan's military will be the 3rd biggest by expenditure after US and China. Under these changes, Japan intends to acquire weapons that are capable of striking the enemy 1,000 kilometers away. We're talking about land or sea launched missiles. Japanese voters have been traditionally skeptical about ramping up the Japanese military expenditure. After the war in Ukraine started, this has been changing, especially after the last escalation of tensions between China and Taiwan when Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. Japanese voters are really coming on board with the increase in expenditure of the military. Japan's government has stated that these new weapons will be strictly used only in self-defense, and they emphasize the word counter-strike, not strike. If we're talking about the United States dollars, then Japan intends to pump 320 billion USD into the armed forces in the next 5 years, and that is in addition to what they're already spending. This means Japan will raise taxes for this. They cannot pull this money out of thin air. We are yet to see how the Japanese voters and taxpayers will react to the increases in taxes. Japan is also expected to increase their military presence in the southernmost islands, tripling the number of military units and equipment there. All of this is the outcome of Russian-Ukrainian war. We have Germany pumping huge amounts into its military. We have Japan going even further. We have Poland, a country which is buying an unspeakable amount of weapons all over the world, and they are ramping up their own weapon production faster than you can keep up. Countries around Russia and China are militarizing fast. This Ukrainian-Russian conflict really brought out the fact that the Western world, and Japan also, cannot only rely on United States security. They need their own. And I completely agree with this. Hungary, you know, the black sheep of the EU, has seized 925 million USD worth of Russian assets. In an EU Commission assessment, Ukrainian losses during the conflict have amounted up to 600 billion USD, and the West combined has blocked up to 300 billion USD of Russian assets. Most Western countries right now agree that these 300 billion should be allocated towards Ukraine, repairing the infrastructure and pay war reparations. Of course, they don't cover the entire damage done to Ukraine as a country, but they do cover a huge part of it. I'm waiting to see if the Western countries agree and make a special fund, a Ukrainian rebuilding fund where all of this money will be put into. Starting from today, you can again walk on the pedestrian and bicycle bridge in Kiev. I wanted to cover this because I remember covering the very moment where this bridge was destroyed. It was back in summer, at the beginning of summer if I remember correctly. I remember making a video about it, the missile hit. There was a person walking on the bridge at the same time, and it was a very different time in war. There was a lot of uncertainty, and seeing Russian missiles wreak havoc like that, it made me afraid for Ukraine. I didn't want to show it, but I really was. Now I see this bridge being repaired. I mean, Ukrainians have this attitude that they will repair infrastructure right now. They will fix it right now. They're not going to wait until this war is over or until Russians won't bomb anymore. They'll do it now. You cannot destroy a nation with this attitude. Ukrainian people really remind me of the clip from Family Guy about the Amish, where Peter was shooting down their barn, they built it up, then there was a grenade, they built it up again, then there was a bazooka and they built it up again. The Ukrainians are like the Amish in this video. They will prevail. About 2 months ago, we visited this website, Russia Fossil Fuel Tracker. I want to look over this website again because from the 5th of December, there's a price ceiling on the Russian oil of 60 USD per barrel. No country in the world, in the entire world that uses ships to transport oil can break this because all the insurance companies of the ships are owned by the Western countries, and if the oil is sold for more than 60 USD per barrel, they don't get insurance, hence they cannot sail. I really want to see if it reflects in the data. So this is daily payment amounts per fuel type. This is all the money that Russia gets all over the world by fuel types. We see that oil has slowly been decreasing, very slowly and very steadily. Same can be said about the gas, natural gas. It has slowly been decreasing, and if this trend continues, Russian economy will collapse. I mean, their entire economy is built upon these revenues here, and if they go down, same happened to the Soviet Union after the war in Afghanistan. The oil revenues went down, and so did the entire country. Coal makes out the smallest parts of their revenue, but as we can see, this has not been decreasing. Daily payment amounts by geography. This green one here is the EU, and look, war started 24th of February, right here. Boom, fossil fuel prices went up, and ooh, EU was paying 700 million per day. And then, slowly and steadily, it goes up, it goes down, but the long-term trend is that it's going down and it's decreasing, and it's beautiful to see. This here is 5th of December. I mean, so little time has passed, but we can see the trend continues even stronger. EU is paying 200 million per day right now. They were paying 700 million in 15th of March. I really gotta give it to EU. It's really hard to cut yourself off from a dependency like that, and the EU is doing it steadily. You cannot change this with one day. I mean, people want the EU to just not pay at all. This is not possible. It's just not possible. The trend we're seeing here is as efficient as it gets on getting rid of Russian oil dependency. This huge fall right here is when the fossil fuel prices dropped. Boom, like that. Largest importers of fossil fuels from Russia, of course, it is China. They import oil, gas and coal the most. And then we have Germany, Turkey, India, and then the other EU countries. What I want to focus here is we can see the trends. We have 9 months of raw data. We see the long-term trends. You cannot kill an economy with one day, and you cannot get rid of your oil dependency in one day. It takes time, and this is incredibly fast for the entire EU to make these changes. Fast forward 2 years and I think Russian economy is in a horrible state. EU is taking away their lifeline. And if you're talking about that India is going to buy the oil and China is going to buy the oil, these two countries only buy Russian oil at a huge discount. The EU was the only entity that bought Russian oil with huge margins, giving billions of profits to Russian economy, but India and China do not buy with these prices. Russia owes a lot of money to China, which means China buys this oil with huge discounts. India and China will never replace the amounts that the EU was giving to Russia. In Great Britain, a new statue of Vladimir Putin was opened in the village of Bell End. It is truly marvelous. I value art in its purest form and this is it. I think people in the Kremlin should send this to Vladimir Putin to see how he is depicted in the West and how he is seen in the West. A true masterpiece. I like it. If you're still here, you are special to me. And if you have not subscribed by this point, you might as well hit the subscribe button if you like these videos. Also, go and become a patron. I might be butchering your name. Thank you for watching, my friends. Thank you for coming back time and time again. I really appreciate you. And until my next video, Slava Ukraini.